Well, a new nullification crisis is brewing in the United States. Uh, the first nullification crisis, I believe, was over the Tariff of Abominations, which the South refused to enforce back around 1830 or so. And more recently, we've had some nullification standoffs between states which have not wanted to enforce some different laws. Immigration is the most notable one, probably sanctuary cities. That's a nullification, essentially, of federal immigration law. Or, more directly, it's them saying, well, we're not going to assist federal authorities in enforcing these laws. That's, kind of how the approach they take. Similarly, with the new Second Amendment sanctuary counties, where county sheriffs will run on a ballot of or on a platform of, hey, if some higher authority decides to declare some big gun confiscation program, I will protect you and that will not happen here. And then the third kind of nullification that we've been seeing is, of course, of drug laws, marijuana mostly. That is a Schedule I drug, according to the federal government. Very bad to have it, but certain states say, hey, we're not going to do anything about it if you have it, and the feds have, in those states, stood down and have not tried to, go in and bust all these people who have marijuana in Colorado and California and these other places. Well, the new nullification crisis that may be brewing is over the lockdowns, the impending lockdowns that have been telegraphed by the man who, one of the men who claims that he's going to be the president of the United States come January 20th. Of course, that's still in dispute, and we won't really know probably by December 14th, or until December 14th when the Electoral College meets. As I've discussed many times, Trump has his strategy going of trying to block that and try to overturn certain states that he thinks he won. But anyway, for now, people are having to make plans in the case that Joe Biden is successful and is able to become the president of the United States. He has promised a national mask mandate, potential, national lockdowns, things of this nature. But the specifics haven't been too heavy. We haven't heard too much. The most specific thing he said was national mask mandate. Well, okay, that's one thing. But other more severe measures, things that aren't quite so, I guess, happy talk, feel-goody, like, say, a national lockdown. Those, you're seeing two governors that I've noticed come out directly and say that they will not enforce that. You have the governor of Mississippi who decided to abolish their flag for no reason. And then you have Kristi Noem of South Dakota. Those two governors are saying, hey, if Joe Biden wants to try and lock down our state, we're not going to have any of it. We're going to stay free here. I'd imagine that if push comes to shove, Ron DeSantis in Florida would be the next most likely person to say no to that. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. But, this is an interesting thing for them to go on record about this before there's anything set in stone, before Biden is even president, before it's even 100% clear that he's going to be president. And, perhaps this is a signal to the potential incoming administration that, hey, you're not just going to be able to push us around. We're going to do what we think is right. We're not going to let you subjugate our people. Now, were this to come to pass and Biden were to come into office and say, okay, we need a national lockdown. We've got to shut everything down, just like back in March. But everybody's got to do it, and we have to do it uniformly. And everyone needs to stay home now. I think that it's pretty clear then that he would be unable to enforce that across the country. There, of course, are simply not that many federal agents in the country to try and, break into every home and or every restaurant and shut every public gathering down. It's just not feasible. The only way you do that is by partnering with the local law enforcement agencies. You need those governors and those county sheriffs on your side, or else the president's edicts will carry no weight. And that, to me, is something that I very much would like to see. I would love more than anything, to see a president try and, through executive fiat, pass some, crazy tyrannical rule, and then just to have people say no, and to disregard them, and to disobey them. Because that would really, for a lot of people, I think, wake them up and make them realize that the president is not a god, that the president can't just speak his words into reality, that just because the President of the United States says something, that does not make it so, that the President of the United States is not an all-powerful dictator. And so therefore, by, overstepping and doing something that people refuse to comply with, Joe Biden will have undermined the cult of the presidency, which to me would be a great service to America. It's kind of like what I've been saying for the last couple of years about gun control. I don't really fear gun control too much because people have made it clear that they don't want to comply with it. And so if you ever had something like the assault weapons ban again, or, something to where nationally they try and ban all ARs or something like that, people are not going to go along with it. It's obvious that that's unenforceable. And that really, is the true message of freedom, is that, the way that you stay free is not by trying to preserve the Constitution or by electing the right people who aren't going to take away your freedoms. The way that you, remain free as a people is you become ungovernable beyond, the reasonable means that people accept, beyond, complying with murder investigations and things like that, and, basic functions of government that most people don't disagree on. But when it comes to violations of your civil liberties, you don't comply. Now, of course, it's impossible to do that by yourself. And if you do that, then you're just going to be martyred. And nobody really wants to be a martyr. I know I don't. Perhaps some people do. But the average American does not want to be a martyr. And so this only works if people en masse refuse to comply. And it's a hard thing to coordinate. But we're seeing it more and more in this country over the past few years. The marijuana stuff, the sanctuary cities, the Second Amendment sanctuary counties, and then now what potentially could turn into being, lockdown sanctuary states. Remember, early on, when this whole crisis first started with the Wu flu, the media was calling on Trump to enforce a national lockdown. They wanted him to tell what everyone in every state should do. And Trump, much to, I don't know if I would say I was super surprised, but I was happily surprised to some extent. I wouldn't have been shocked if he had gone along with what the media was saying. But the fact that he didn't, and that he did punt this to the states and said to the governors, do what's best for your people, well, still not a great thing, because you have a lot of bad governors who did a lot of bad things, like Gretchen Whitmer and Andrew Cuomo. But it's better than the president just coming up by himself and deciding what bad things the entire country should do, which is exactly what Joe Biden or Kamala Harris would have done in that situation. And so it's not unreasonable for us to assume that at some point in the first few months of a potential Biden-Harris administration, that you will see national action of that nature taken. And if they do so, I hope that they don't do piecemeal little things, like not just a national mask mandate, even though, that I don't think would be enforceable either. I want them to go for something really, really strong and tyrannical, like saying all restaurants have to be shut down in the entire country, that sort of thing. Something that you really, really have to put people out of their way in order for them to enforce. Something so egregious that governors all across this country and sheriffs all across this country, will happily in public say, I refuse to comply. Because the only way that we are going to get back any semblance of freedom in this country is if, we delegitimize federal institutions writ large. The federal government is the greatest impetus to human innovation and human freedom in this country. It is this blob that is totally impenetrable for ordinary people, but, of course, is very easy for, whatever various foreign interests or military special interests or large corporate concerns. Those sorts of people function very well in Washington. And of course, having all the powers of the federal government essentially nullified and passed back to the state governments is not ideal either, because it's also pretty hard to influence your state government. But it's a step in the right direction. Ultimately, what you would want is you would want all these powers essentially back to the local level, something akin to the Holy Roman Empire, which I praise, nonstop, pretty much. Because when a government, is physically close to its people and doesn't have that many people that it is lording over, it becomes very difficult to oppress those people, because that government it's not very strong. By nature, it's weak. And so if they try and push too far, and they push their constituents' buttons, they they very likely will be voted out, and if that doesn't work, they'll probably be overthrown by force. I mean, it's the same logic as, why it's worse to have a world government than a national government. But of course, I don't think that all these institutions will be abolished outright anytime soon, but they could be rendered meaningless. They could be rendered totally powerless if we get to the point to where the president just says something, and he says, okay, everybody has to do this now, and nobody pays attention to him. Nobody is going to pay attention to the president later, even if that president changes, even if that president goes from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris, or if that president goes from Kamala Harris to Mike Pence, or if it goes back to being Donald Trump again, or if Donald Trump stays the president forever. Of course, the 4 years of Donald Trump, I think, has done a lot on the left to make them a bit more skeptical of the presidency. Obviously not enough to where they would oppose somebody of their own side overstepping his powers, but it's planted that seed in for them. And of course, if we go back to a Democratic president, the right is going to be far more skeptical of executive power than they were under Trump, just like they were under Obama. People tend to feel comfortable when their own side is in power. So in closing, I think it's good that there are these governors who are starting to stand up and who will not go along with the herd, come what may. It gives me hope for our future, no matter who ends up prevailing, whether that's Trump or Biden at this point. So with that said, if you gain anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see folks back here tomorrow.